Greetings, hello, and welcome to Reanimated. This is episode 430, if you're keeping count. My name is Stuart. I'm in California. Joining me from New York, in both of us in Turkey sated situations, H.A. Conrad. Hello, good morning. How are you?
Hello, I am well. Good
Good.
morning.
Hello. Welcome back to the show, H.A. I know that it's been a while, aka 1 week, since we
That
watched The Radleys, which was a fun movie.
was a fun
But
romp.
now we're getting back into something that, man, I don't know about you, but I am driven to watch more of this show. I feel like an urge. I want to
Okay,
watch this show real bad.
so
We're
I have
watching
a
we're watching
I
Silo season 2, and we're going to get into it after a little bit of news. But go ahead, HA, what are you saying?
I was going to say I deliberately watched this morning because, and I was right, I wanted to not jump into the second episode and I knew I would be tempted to, and I was like, even though I knew I did not have time to watch the second episode, I did almost press play, but I did not. I kept my willpower strong and I did not do it, but it was right for me to put that limitation on myself
Yeah.
because I am really excited to see the next episode. So,
Yeah. This show has its hooks in us like the books did.
yep,
And it's the faithful so far adaptation. It doesn't hurt in that obsession. But let's talk quickly about, or not quickly, about our news today. There's a couple of little things. The first one that we're going to talk about is a film that has suddenly like just dropped fully formed like Athena out of Zeus's thigh or wherever the hell she was born from. Uh,
his head.
was it his head? Yeah, I don't remember. Some body part where children should not be born from. But not also to draw too many parallels between the goddesses and whatever Decade of the Dead is, which is the film I'm talking about. This trailer just suddenly dropped, and it was like it's also on VOD, and it's also like here it is, here's the movie.
Yeah,
Uh,
immediately just there.
yeah, and I mean, I watched the trailer. The trailer's probably a minute too long because it just shows a lot of like kind of mediocre action effects.
Yep,
If they had maybe just kept it to a dialogue and a very, very light plot trailer, it might have been a better sales pitch for the film.
yep.
But the longer it went on, the less I wanted to see it. Yeah, and I don't know who is what the pedigree is of this film. When you put Of the Dead behind it, I mean everybody does, but it kind of says this might be a Romero family or estate blessed project. I don't know. I don't know if it was. It feels like they found a Hawaiian island, or I don't know where they might have shot this. Hawaii's probably too expensive.
No, no, it is. It
It-
is a basically a homegrown Hawaiian film.
oh, it is.
Yep, and I after this came up, I'm like, where on earth did this even come from? And so yeah, it was definitely a little bit of a homegrown film, and I think that's really cool. And they did it on a shoestring budget, and 95% of the cast and crew are from native indigenous Hawaii, um, ba Hawaiian, sorry, background or local background. So that's pretty cool. And they shot it all in Oahu.
Okay,
So
that is cool, but I mean, go with zero context. I feel
no,
like my read of the trailer still stands.
yeah, I agree. But like I'm gonna check this out. I'm really excited about this. So
You can report
this was
back.
like this was like a little gift delivered to my inbox. So I'm excited. Um, and I will definitely check it out. And I think that just the sort of general synopsis is that this is 10 years past, I think, whatever zombie apocalypse happened, and it's just following the survivors. And as often happens, it's more of a survivor against some of the survivors versus the zombies that they are certainly in there, obviously. So anyway, we will have to add this to our list and we will have to check it out and report back.
Most
Um,
okay,
but
sure.
we also saw a couple other little tidbits. of
Season
news.
2 of Zombieverse is getting some love on the internet. I did notice some of this out there too in a couple places. It might just be that it's a slow news week, but
Maybe,
uh,
but it's been a lot of, and
it is.
it definitely has some spoilers in here. So just heads up, if you are looking at some of the information, you will be spoiled by this. I was. So, did you happen to delve deeper into it, Stuart?
I
I
did
don't.
not go beyond the headlines because it's
Yeah.
already kind of something that's not like high on my list of things to watch, but it's the kind of thing that I do put on every so often. And my family is like, "What is wrong with you?" every time I do it.
Same. Only I only have like one person to worry about, so a little easier for me. But I would say if you want to be surprised, don't look at more of just know that it's out there and watch it. But
I mean, I never finished season 1, so I feel like I kind of have to do that to get to this.
oh, so I did. So it was definitely a big spoiler for me. One of the things they revealed in this in the most recent press junket, and it's also there's a trailer that reveals a lot too if you watch through the whole season.
Okay.
So just putting that out there as a little bit of a spoiler alert if you don't
Yeah.
want to be spoiled. Um, and then this next little piece that I found is just ridiculous and silly, but Gladiator 2 is out in theaters now, and as hopefully most people know, and when Russell Crowe was asked about it, like his character died in the first film. So people are like, "Are you coming back for Gladiator 2?" And he's like, "No, I can't because, my character died." But apparently at one point he had asked Nick Cave of Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds to write a film treatment for him to somehow come back, and he did. It's obviously something that is not ever going to happen, and it's ridiculous and probably shouldn't be made. Definitely shouldn't be made. But basically, it involves making the main character into a zombie that then fights through the Crusades into modern times. And it was just a very silly little article, but I was a little tickled by it, admittedly, for so many reasons. But just the fact that Nick Cave took him seriously and actually wrote a 103-page treatment for this thing. Um, so anyway, did you look at the little interview? It was pretty funny.
I haven't read it in great detail. It just the even just the headline is enough to make me shake my head.
Mhm.
But I honestly I don't remember how Maximus died at the end of Gladiator, but I'm sure it was just from lots of wounding, being wounded too much.
Well, there's lots of wounding and some double crossing at the end. So um but it was I don't know. I just thought this was just silly and funny. So anyway, just check it out if you feel like it. It's just I like people like having fun. I just think that's, especially creative people having fun.
Feels like a
Um
lot of work for Nick Cave to have gone through just to be like, nah.
I don't know. It seems like up his alley. It seems on brand for him.
He's
He
the kind of
doesn't
guy who would
like
just write a
things.
whole script as a joke.
Yep. Yes, absolutely. He does seem like that kind of person. So, and he's got a good sense of humor, and apparently Russell Crowe is not very happy with the end result. But there it is. But it is out there in all of its wild glory for anybody to read. So, you should definitely check it out. Um, but that's about it for news this week. And, that's not surprising given that it's a holiday week.
Yeah.
But that gives us a little bit of time to talk about Silo episode 1 of the season 2. And I'm really excited to talk about this with you. So,
This episode is entitled The Engineer. It was written by Graham Yost, who's the showrunner, and directed by Michael Dinner. I like names like that. That's a cool name.
mhm.
It came out a couple weeks ago, so we are catching on up. This is an interesting episode. It is notable for having long stretches of no dialogue, long stretches of only Rebecca Ferguson on screen. And I think, how we often talk about how people use flashbacks in shows and movies, and we're not always fans. But I think in an episode that's constructed like this one, the flashbacks are 100% necessary.
I agree, but I also think they used them judiciously here.
Mhm.
And it was well paced, and it was definitely adding context and very excitingly showing us one of the other silos, which
Yeah, and that's how the episode begins is with like a flashback to we have to assume this is years ago based on the decomposition that we're
Yep.
seeing later on. This is years and years ago that an uprising is unfolding or like finalized like the ending stages of an uprising in a silo. And the sheriff of this silo is none other than Liebgott from Band of Brothers. There's some Band of Brothers connection to this show
There
because in
has
the
to be. There has
last
to be, right?
season it was Lutz, right?
Yep. Yep.
And this season I mean, Lutz, I think his character's still alive. He might have gotten arrested last season, but hopefully we'll see that dude. I forget
Yep.
his name at the moment. But then Liebgott shows up as the sheriff of whatever number silo this is. And honestly, big fan of the work that he's doing in this short
Oh yeah,
flashback
he was
scenes.
great. I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, I was sad at how short-lived it was, but yes, that was definitely I was like, I thought the same exact thing. I said, well, who's the Band of Brothers connection here?
Yeah,
With
is it someone in production? The casting agent? Somebody is just picking up Band of Brothers guys who, criminally have not worked nearly as much as I want to see them in everything since 2001 when that show started.
well, except for Damian Lewis, who actually had
Except,
quite a bit of work. I'm just,
yeah,
well, I will admit, when I saw this, I was like, maybe Damian Lewis is going to make an appearance in here at some
maybe there are
point.
lots of characters who we haven't been introduced to yet.
That is true. There is always time. Anyway, but I digress. I digress. Anyway, this was a really great little vignette, and I do think part of it for me was like at first was this the original silo because they do talk about a rebellion in the first season that happens, and that's part of why some of the engineers are being punished for different things.
Yeah, and the previously on intro to this episode is also critical. I hope people didn't skip it because
Yeah.
it does highlight things like 140 years ago we had an attempted uprising, which is why we
Yep.
burned all our books and da 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 da.
Yep.
And we don't actually know if any of that is even true. That could all be part of the mythos that
Yeah,
is help.
and the propaganda that's
Yeah,
being pushed forth. Yep.
but this could be 140 years ago when there's an uprising happening in this silo. Like maybe that's what we're looking at here. But I don't know that it feels that long ago. But there's no way of telling time in the silo, at least long patches of time.
Mm.
But that was really helpful to watch that like previously on and get a reminder of Rashida Jones going out the airlock. Remember when
Ye-
she was on this show? Holy crap!
well, I will admit I forgot until that flashback, and so that was I was like, oh yes, I forgot about that. I actually then I did rewatch a couple of little sections just to remind myself of a couple of things from the
Yeah.
season one because the recap wasn't quite enough for me. So I would say if you have time, go ahead and redo a couple of things, especially I think the last episode. But it this was really fantastic to see this uprising and what that might look like. I really liked how they staged it. Once
Yeah.
again, I would say the cinematography, the editing is just incredibly well done.
They've
Uh,
built a silo, and in this case, I'm assuming it's the same set as they used last season. They're
yep,
using probably the same set for the silo too. They've dunked it underwater for some of
yep,
it. Like they've really put this set to
yep,
its paces. Hopefully, they're getting their money's worth out of it.
yep. Um,
But yeah, like the no light past his point, son. And then the bell signal, and then the like cutting to the guys at IT going like, "What's with the bells?" And with their guns and their barricades, it feels like Les Miserables, sort of. I don't
yep,
know. This was just really cool. Like clearly the silo occupants are at loggerheads with IT, and they have the numbers, even though IT has the guns.
yep,
It's it's pretty cool. You don't get to see everything, and clearly, like then there's a cut after they're getting over that little bridge. There's a cut, and we're back with Liebgott looking in a mirror after the last thing he said was, "Don't take Terry alive." And then the next thing we know is Terry's dead. And
yep,
Liebgott's like, I slipped. I didn't mean to. And his wife's like, it's okay.
yep,
The note that his son has given him is that engineering will flood in 15 minutes. So that's their signal to attack IT. They know there's some sort of clock ticking down. They don't really know what's going on. And then we still don't know what's going on when Liebgott decides well, even if Terry was not lying, I think, because there's some question of why wouldn't he open the door? Why, why was he lying or not? And they're like, well, either way, we're dead anyway, so we're gonna go outside. Is kind of how they
Yep.
they decide. And he goes outside with this green flag, and everybody looks excited, and they're all running up the stairs and cheering. It's
Yeah. And they're
a happy.
also, I mean, he's running up the stairs and his child is running up the stairs with him.
Mhm.
So it's like it's a whole crowd of people. And so
10,000, we might
yeah,
be led to believe,
yep. And
give or take.
so yeah, so they are on the way out and then they flash to that flag very it's just so dark. It's like a very tattered and sad flag and we that they again the editing is done incredibly well here and we immediately see Juliet seeing the flag and wandering through this now devastated landscape and it's all bodies, it's all skeletons. They did not make it very far and it's a huge number of them and they're all like spread out and kind of died where they ended up very shortly after getting out of the silo and not
If
all of them
they
made
got
it
out of
out
the
and
silo,
not all of them
yeah.
made it out.
Like that's the crazy thing is the sheriff clearly made it over the hill and down into the next valley before, and so did his wife and kid. So
Yep.
they must have been sprinting out of there.
Yep.
Um, I imagine that they were all kind of disappointed by what they found out there
Yeah.
too.
Yep.
But and then the beautiful shot or the way that they established that all of these bodies are spread out around the entrance slash exit. Some of them have even gone around behind into the crater.
Yep. Yep.
Um, Juliet does her first of several falls in this when she goes
Yeah.
inside the staircase. She's clearly like on a mission to get inside. I think maybe she understands that she has limited oxygen. I didn't kind of know that until it starts to run out and like 10 minutes later
Yep.
in the show. But she unhesitatingly is like, I got to get in there.
Hmm.
Honestly, the odds on her surviving this are probably astronomical, just based on all of the things um, opposing any progress she should be making. But that's why this episode's called The Engineer in some level. Like it's also about her childhood, but um, like then we kind of enter into this a multi-scene sequence of her solving problems, which I super love about this episode.
I do too, and it's problem solving in because she has no other choice to some extent.
Yeah.
And it's also incredibly like she gets into this other silo. It is super creepy in there.
Yeah, but
And
getting
not
in by itself is like
yes,
she
it's
has to do some insane like lever. Luckily there was there just so happened to be a lantern and some pry bars right by the
lucky
next
for
door.
her.
Like
Lucky for her.
maybe what they're saying is that the doors were closed behind them and they were trying to get back in. That could be part of what they're doing, but I feel like they only had a couple of minutes once those doors were open and the top door was open before they were going to die anyway. So I don't know that that was the case. Maybe they were just carrying pry bars for fun. But either
Maybe.
way, she manages to break her way into the silo, closes both outer doors, and then races through the cafeteria. We're seeing all this graffiti everywhere. Yeah, I mean, you're right that the it is super creepy in there, but it's also like she's clearly not put off by the creepiness. Like she's pretty cool. Of course, she's sprinting at this stage because she's trying to get as far downstairs as she can before suddenly her air cuts out, and then she has to shatter her face mask, which is terrifying to do. Like you're throwing a pry bar at your face over and over again.
So I did like when she cut her arm, when did she cut her arm? Was that getting in? That was one part I was like, where exactly
I also, once she was wrapping it up for like the second time, I was like, I don't remember. Plus, it looks like a zombie bite. I don't
it
remember
totally
where this happened. It could have happened at any point. Clearly, it didn't happen while she was outside because that would have been bad. So it's something that happened since she came in. But
yeah.
what, like maybe when she fell off the ledge,
No, maybe. Um,
could have
but
been.
it does look like a bite, totally.
Yeah.
Anyway, she's having a time of it, but I think, look, Rebecca Ferguson is such a great actor, and you fully believe that she's like they add in the flashbacks, and we already know this about her character. We know it from the first season, but she is a force that will not be stopped, and the alternative is death, right? So she just keeps moving forward. She's a problem solver, she's an engineer. And I like how the flashbacks, like if you didn't watch the first season, the flashbacks absolutely remind you of that. And not only of that, but sort of where she comes from and how she built herself back up. There's some really great scenes between her and Walker, where Walker basically is like, no, no, we don't talk around things down here, and like we say the truth as painful as they might be because they're talking about her mother's suicide. And that I thought was a really fantastic exchange. Like they do a lot with some very the flashbacks aren't incredibly long, but they are very effective.
Yeah, we
Um,
have also a lot more establishing her relationship with Shirley, who didn't get a ton of screen time last
so
season. But so Shirley is kind of like her first friend, other than Walker, in Mechanical, where she goes as a child after she requests to go or runs away from home in last season. Because this is the same actor who we saw doing Juliet flashbacks in season one when she runs away from Jorah Mormont to Mechanical to go be with Walker, who knew her mom in some capacity before. And so she hooks up with Shirley. She's on this conveyor belt, taking and recycling and learning to put things back together. When she gets her hands on the radio, which I feel like we've seen in season one, that radio set that Walker uses.
yep.
Um, and she shows her skill at fixing little toys and befriending Shirley. And then they also go down to the Digger Cavern, which I kind of associated more with her boyfriend in season one because he was like living down there or something, right? He was obsessed
Yeah.
with artifacts.
Yep. And so I guess like just even showing them down there, I kind of thought she hadn't been down there before, but I guess she already knew about it. So there's that. And but it does show how familiar she is overall with the plan of the silo, like the floor plan basically. She
Hmm.
knows exactly where she's going, and I don't think she knows that she knows that until she starts like going down in and she even finds, like sort of the remains of the orchard in this particular silo.
Oh,
And
in present day, yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Like the
Like,
silo is exactly the same. Like the first place she goes in is an open apartment where she shatters the mirror and finds the camera. She's like, okay, this is exactly the same
yep,
as. And
yep.
I think she like pauses inside that apartment and looks around, and it's kind of like, yeah, this is the same layout as other apartments in my silo.
So I thought that that was kind of cool.
Yeah, the crops that was super cool too. Especially since in the previously on montage we've seen like how verdant and green and beautiful it is, and then in the silo she's in, it's like there's some weird vines growing on stuff, but everything is also like half dead. Um, and there's just like a little water dripping here and there. What do you think she poured on herself when she was getting out of her spacesuit? It looked red
I think
almost.
I think that looked just like I think it was rusted water. I think she was just trying to get whatever was on her from outside off of her, like
Yeah,
decontamination.
yeah,
I think it was just water, but maybe it was something else. It was hard to tell.
yeah.
Um,
It could have been rusty water. I was like, why is there like Kool-Aid in these thermoses in the asylum?
yeah.
I mean, that was another just like, okay, so she's taking all these steps even when she's kind of freaking out and panicked to and like she does a lot of things in this episode that don't really work, but they are well thought out. You know what I mean? Like the
Yep.
because then she's wandering around and like she's getting water out of that one sprinkler head. She hears metal clanging every so often, and while you and I are like metal clanging, this is terrifying, this is very spooky and scary, she's just kind of like, hello.
Hmm.
Is there somebody there? She's not perturbed at all.
Yeah, she's definitely not as terrified as I would be.
Yeah.
Um, and I was thinking the first thing, well, as she's sort of like going around, I kept waiting for a jump scare or something. She just keeps kind of pushing forward and figuring out what she's going to do. I will say the minute she starts really like doing the whole thing where she's tying the rope to the edge of the to get down further, I was like, oh no, someone's gonna cut that rope. That just seems very vulnerable. Like it was
And
very
did somebody cut that rope?
it felt like maybe that's what happened.
Doesn't she go back up and look at it and go,
She
"What the
does.
hell?"
Yes. So that
Yeah.
I was like
And
a
there are
little,
a couple of camera perspectives that appear to be I'm looking at Juliet from this vantage point. Um, but they never moved around. It was never definitive. It was just like, here's a weird view of Juliet doing what she's doing from like an area over here where we haven't, we don't know what's going on over there. So it was just suggestive. It was enough of a suggestion of being watched to
yep,
make it extra. Yeah, so I think all the creepiness is laid on the audience. Julia is just like, I'm fine. I'm an engineer. I'm solving problems. Um, but yeah, she did not quite have enough rope for her first attempt. Where she
nope,
got the rope, I thought was pretty cool. Like just all these hanging bodies of enforcers.
yeah.
It was a lot of rope that they didn't feel like they were going to need in the outside world, I guess, because they have very limited resources inside these places. They've been trained their whole lives not to like waste things. Thought it was a little bit weird that they were like, let's just hang up these bodies. And these are the bodies that I meant, like, because of the way their decomp
Oh
is,
yeah.
those are the ones that I'm like, okay, so then clearly a lot of time has passed since this uprising.
Yep. And the decomp was done very well, I thought too. I thought this was a very convincing set. I really loved how it was just such a mirror, obviously. There's the same outline. It's all the stuff that she's used to, but it's like she's in a complete like alternate universe almost, which is kind of fun. And we got to know the silo really well and just sort of the makeup of it. And we know that it takes a really long time to get down to engineering. Like people like sort of set aside um days to do it. So I really felt like the whole season one set this up in a really good way.
Yeah,
So knowing how hard it is for her to do what she's doing, and especially with the challenges of now basically this broken down infrastructure in there and having to figure out how to get around those obstacles with the limited resources that she has, but she does it and she makes it work because that's what she does. And that's, I think, the successful use of the flashbacks just showing how she is very like stubborn and um just will not give up. Like she has a willpower that is just indomitable.
yeah.
So I kind of liked that. I thought this was a really successful episode, and I honestly think not that you would do this, but I think it makes it accessible for people who didn't even watch the first season, which it isn't often the case. I think you'd really miss out if you didn't watch the first season.
Yeah, I don't know that I would be able to keep up with. I'm like, what's she doing? Where is she? What?
Yeah, I don't think you should do that. I just
Yeah.
think that you could do that. So,
The second bridge or the second way she tries to get across this chasm into IT after she falls in water and like basically has to learn how to swim because she's never swam before.
yeah.
She manages to doggy paddle to the stairs. She's honestly super lucky she didn't like die on that in that
Well,
fall.
and there's also like, is there other stuff in the water? There's like tons of stuff that you could, you
She
know.
goes back to the open apartment, the sheet metal coveralls take two. She changes into dry clothes and then tries again. And builds a bridge out of scaffolding. Like she's using, it's like an 8 minute scene of her putting together this scaffolding bridge. It's kind of wild. And this is where they use some of those third person perspective shots that make you think she's also being watched. But she's making a ton of noise. And she's still hearing noises elsewhere in the silo, but they could be just like things falling apart potentially. Who knows?
Hmm.
But so the second uh, bridge or attempt that she makes to get across the chasm also fails, which I thought was interesting, given how like how much effort she put into making it work. Still gets across, and she's got like other steps in play to stop her from falling all the way down again. But the bridge collapses, and she is left potentially stranded on the IT side now. Um, and this she does a really short inspection, I think, of this side because she just kind of like she finds the ID badge on the fan, which is making this clinking noise, and then she's like, well, that was a waste of time. And
Hmm.
then I feel like she kind of turns around and leaves almost right away. But she
Yeah,
then again puts together another machine to like make a bridge happen. Like there's a lot of like little building montages in this episode.
there are, but I actually felt like she knew that something was up. I didn't really, I felt like she knew that that fan isn't going to go that entire time. So that was sort of my takeaway. And that's why she was sort of like, okay, I'm going to go and figure this thing out. And she doesn't like, look, she's a person we have seen. She has to solve the puzzle, whatever it is. And that's kind of what they show here. Like she is not, whether it's a toy, whether it's when she's sheriff and she's figuring out the mystery of the silo, she needs to get that answer. And they really build that up into the culmination of the end of this episode, which is incredibly weird. So I think the creepiest thing about it was sort of the end of this episode, obviously.
For sure. Yeah, but it's also the cliffhanger. It's the thing that's like, oh, I really want to see what happens next.
Hence
Um,
my own limitation that I put on myself, and I made it so I couldn't watch the second episode until
Smart
after
move.
we spoke.
Yep.
But I desperately wanted to push play.
So after she's created her second bridge, third potential crossing of this chasm, this time I think it sticks. She is like kicking it. She's going, okay. Like she's just having these little comments to herself, like good day's work, sort of monosyllabic things she's saying. And then she starts to hear music coming from back in IT, which is Moon River, and she wanders back in there. She's clearly opening doors that she hadn't opened before, which I
Yep.
was like, "What? You didn't look in every room when you were in there? That feels a little weird." So she's opening doors. She's finding more bodies, more graffiti. This might be the door. It's like a bank vault door that the sheriff was referring to. We can imagine in the beginning of the show. She gives it a yank. She looks at it. There's like a keypad in one corner. And then as she's walking away, Steve Zahn shows up. Although we don't really know that it's him, but I know it's him. That's Steve Zahn.
Oh yeah.
He's got like two different color eye. He's got one eye contact in that make his eyes look like they're different colors. He might have a scar. He has longer hair, and he looks.
Looks very dirty and sweaty.
He sounds crazy too.
Yep.
And he says a quick little thing like, "Hey, I'm glad you heard the music. I love that song." So he clearly wanted her to come over here so that he could talk to her.
Yep.
But then he delivers a threat, which is
Yeah.
kind of funny. Like, clearly, I mean, who knows what's going through his head? We'll find out more. But it's kind of like he was really lonely, just wanted to talk to somebody. But the only
Yep.
thing he really could say was never, never come over here again.
Well, don't open the door. He doesn't say don't come over. He just says don't try to open the door, even though I know it was he's like he's very matter of fact and kind of like, I understand why you did this, but you better not do it again. And it's like, all right, Steve Zahn.
And she
Yeah.
looks taken aback, Juliet.
Yep,
She's like, actually, I think takes a step back.
she does. So yeah, so that's kind of where they left it. I do love everything they did in this episode. I am fully tied in to whatever I'm invested. I'm excited to see whatever happens next.
Does this like I think this is second book of the book series. This is where we are right now.
Yep.
It felt very familiar to me. I haven't read these books in I don't know many years, but it felt extremely familiar. Do you
Yes, it did. I feel like they made a couple of differences here, if I recall, because I feel like she ran into
a person outside of IT?
two people, like children or something. I vaguely remember, but maybe I again, it's been a while.
I
It
have that vague recollection also.
So but overall, like I do think it was more effective having her be alone, kind of trying to find her way down, depending on what they're gonna do next. So I like that idea. This definitely gives me, I know it sounds like a little bit of like Lost vibes in that, there's this whole mystery happening, different people that have been cut off from different things. So this cliffhanger felt very Lost-esque to me, like from that sort of that cliffhanger kind of point of view, where there's this big mystery. So, but I do hope that they actually do resolve a lot of these mysteries versus leave them hanging like they did in Lost. So we shall see what happens.
Yeah,
But
I can see the Lost connection here, but luckily for us, I hope this does not share a lot of DNA with Lost, other than
I hope not.
some of these familiar sort of scenarios. Yeah, very excited for the next episode.
Indeed. So not an insanely long episode today, but I'm very excited to talk about the next episode with you. And maybe I will have to put a limitation on myself because I can already tell that I want to watch everything. And we're enough ahead that that's possible for me to get ahead, so I can't do that. So,
Not that far ahead. If you do go too far ahead, then we'll
no,
be
I know.
waiting.
I know. I have a hard time keeping them separate if I actually watch the next set. So I will restrain myself.
Restrain yourself, HA, and come back next time when we review episode 2, season 2 of Silo. And I hope that the rest of y'all out there get a chance to come along with us. You can, and if you have thoughts or questions or comments, let us know. Send us an email at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. And you can find the rest of our episodes online at reanimated.podbean.com. And I bid you adieu.
Adieu.